Adventist Home 127, paragraph 2. We read that the flesh of itself cannot act contrary to the will of God. And we've now established, hopefully to everyone's satisfaction and agreement, that the flesh is not the body, and that the flesh is not the moral component of the nature of man. Do you all agree with that? Any questions on that? So we've moved the heart from the moral to the what Ellen White terms physical in the passage that we read, but it's not really the physical, it's not the body. It's the part of the human nature that controls or has its seat in the body. It interacts with the world through the body, through the five senses. And we've said that this flesh is emotion, and we gave some examples here. In and of themselves, there's nothing wrong with having emotions. In fact, we're required to have emotions. Why?
For our character.
Sorry?
Part of our character.
Of our character?
We're created in the image of God.
Because we were created in the image of God. Because God has all of these emotions. He has flesh. He has lower passions. Therefore, we have to as well. But obviously something's gone wrong in our nature, that people think a lot of these things are negative. In fact, they are used for a negative purpose. So it says that of itself, it cannot do something. Therefore, it needs some help. So we just want to read a couple of statements before we start looking at what help that it needs to do something. Let's read Education 14.4. Book Education 14.4. As you turn into it, I'll just read the paragraph before. I'll read two paragraphs before. In the knowledge of God, all true knowledge and real development have their source. Wherever we turn in the physical, the mental, or the spiritual realm, in whatever we behold, apart from the blight of sin, this knowledge is revealed. Whatever line of investigation we pursue with a sincere purpose to arrive at truth, we are brought in touch with the unseen, mighty intelligence that is working in and through all. The mind of man is brought into communion with the mind of God, the finite with the infinite. The effect of such communion on body and mind and soul is beyond estimate. Is everybody there? We're in 14.4. I just read 14.2. In this communion is found the highest education. It is God's own method of development. Acquaint now thyself with Him. Job 22:21. In His message is His message to mankind. The method outlined in these words was the method followed in the education of the father of our race. When in the glory of sinless manhood, Adam stood in holy Eden, it was thus that God instructed him. In order to understand what is comprehended in the work of education, we need to consider both the nature of man and the purpose of God in creating him. We need to consider also the change in man's condition through the coming in of a knowledge of evil, and God's plan for still fulfilling His glorious purpose in the education of the human race. So the point I wanted to pick up there was the second sentence. We need to consider also the change in man's condition through the coming in of a knowledge of evil. So what does that mean?
Eating of the apple, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, opened man's mind in a way that changed our condition.
Okay, so you're picking up the coming in of a knowledge of evil from the tree of knowledge and evil and the eating of that, yeah?
That's according to Genesis.
Anyone else? Mr. Catherine?
So we need to understand how, where Adam was in the sinless condition to where we are in the fallen condition, and God's plan for fulfilling His purpose in the restoration back to that condition.
Did everybody get that? Could you repeat that? They can't hear you.
To understand and consider Adam's sinless condition, and then to where we fell into the sinful condition, but God's continuing purpose now will be fulfilled in the restoration back to the condition of Adam's original.
Does everybody agree with that, or any more comments?
I think the following paragraphs explains what you're asking.
The ones that come after? So, in this passage, we know that there was a change in man's condition. So we understand that. In the coming in of a knowledge of evil. What is this knowledge that he receives when he partakes of the fruit?
Good and evil.
What does that mean? So yeah, it says the knowledge of good and evil, but what is the knowledge specifically that he's receiving, that he's understanding now or coming to?
The lower corrupt nature.
They were naked.
What do you mean the lower corrupt nature?
The attributes of that God didn't want us to have.
You mean like God didn't want us to hate things?
No, not in that sense, but the opposite end of the good part, the evil, the results of sin.
Okay, my sister said
That they were naked.
they now have a knowledge that they were naked,
Yeah.
but they weren't naked before.
They didn't know that they were naked before.
You think they were naked before?
They probably were, but they didn't know it.
So if I looked
The
at you
glory
and...
of, the glory of God covered their nakedness, and
So,
now
so they weren't naked then?
we don't know.
Well, if they were naked, how come they wouldn't know it?
Because they had the glory of God covering them.
So all I'm suggesting is they weren't naked. Or you're even suggesting that. No, I'm not suggesting, you are. You're saying that they weren't naked. I mean, they knew they weren't naked because they couldn't see each other's body.
Right.
So they don't know that they're naked now. They actually are naked now, aren't they? And they weren't before. So it can't be a knowledge of that because they were never naked before.
The glory of God covered their nakedness before they sinned. So after they sinned, the glory of God were removed from them. So they already they saw that they were naked after the glory was taken away from them.
Brother Jonathan?
After they sinned, they had a new experience. Suddenly they knew they did something wrong, contrary to God's law.
So this knowledge, where do we place it? In the intellect, the moral, or the physical? When they have a knowledge of good and evil. Intellect, we all agree with that?
Moral.
And more.
So, understanding, knowledge, reason, what did they not know before that they suddenly know now? Shame is an emotion. I don't think it's factual information. Shame is what you feel.
Separation from God.
Sorry?
The separation from God.
You mean before they didn't know that?
They didn't know the separation from God. No.
When you say they didn't know it, I think you're saying they didn't experience it. think that's what you're saying, because what did they already know before they ate?
It's wrong.
Sorry?
They knew it's wrong
Yeah, they
what
know
they
it's
do.
wrong.
And what would happen if they did it?
They would die. Right.
They knew it.
Right.
They knew they were going to, so they didn't get any more information afterwards, did they?
No.
So is the knowledge this, even though it uses the word knowledge?
No.
Brother Nathan.
In the Great Controversy, she says that through the lie of Satan, that they would come to a higher state of understanding and knowledge. She said they did, but that higher state of knowledge and understanding was that it was foolishness or folly to disobey God and something along those lines.
Their experience, they had a knowledge is different than experience. So they knew that the wages of sin was death, but no, they had an experiential knowledge of what evil is.
Okay, let's go to Genesis 2:17. For of the tree of knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. So they've all the knowledge of that, they understand that. They know what's going to happen if they do whatever they're not supposed to do. Let's go forward one chapter. So this is what my sister was saying, Genesis 3:7. And the eyes of them were opened. This is after they've eaten. So some people, not everybody's there. 3:7. And the eyes of them were both open, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So it talks about knowing, knowledge. So is there something that they now have some intellectual understanding that they've realised that they don't have any covering? So to answer that, let's go to one chapter forward to Genesis 4:1. So here it says, and Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I've gotten the man from the Lord. So this new in Genesis 4:1 is the same new in Genesis 3:7. And what's the new in Genesis 4:1 talking about? When it says, and Adam knew his wife. Sorry? This is intimacy, isn't it? This is when they sleep together. This is not, he just never knew about her before. This is Tanya.
I wanted to point out that the challenge that came to Adam and Eve is that they could be like gods. So the knowledge that the serpent wanted to give them is that you don't have to be submitted to God, but you can be like God, and you can be like me, because I'm an animal, and yet I have the wisdom of God, and I can speak. And so this is exactly what Adam and Eve did, and through the experience of having their senses stimulated, they felt that they were on a higher elevation, and they felt like gods.
Yeah, it's all emotions. That's the point I want to make, is it's not intellectual information when it talks about knowledge in Genesis and the comment that Ellen White's making, even though it appears to be. So we could go to Genesis 4:17, 4:25. All of these are talking about an experience that you have in, like a one flesh experience. It's not about information, because all these people knew their wives before. And it's obvious in Genesis 4:25, because Adam knew his wife again. I mean, it's just not talking about intellectual knowledge. So I want to come back to the passage that we're reading. We need to consider, Education 14:4, also the change in man's condition through the coming in of a knowledge of evil. So this word knowledge is what? Because they knew about evil long before. It's an experience of evil that they're having. Can we all Do you would agree with that? Even though it uses the word knowledge. Sometimes this throws us. People read the Spirit of Prophecy and they say, I'm going to read it just as it's written. And they use that as a mark of humility. Perhaps I should say it disrespectfully, it's a sign of ignorance, I think, if we just read things literally as they're written and claim that's a sign of humility. We need to apply some common sense and wisdom when we're approaching the Word of God. Just because it uses the word knowledge doesn't mean it fits here in this intellectual part of a human being's experience or their nature. You have to understand the context of it. Sister Brittany.
What is the connection you're making between the word new in Genesis 4:1 and 3:7?
Because the word new is from the word I knew you, I had knowledge of you.
But you're saying that it's not an intellectual.
Well, 4:1, I mean, he doesn't have an intellectual understanding of his
Right.
wife like I just met them.
Right, but you said that it's also the same word in 3:7. So what are you saying in 3:7? That it's some kind of emotional.
It's an experience that they're
An
having.
experience,
They
okay.
have that, now they have an experience
Okay.
that this is what happens when you separate from God. So it's not like they look in the mirror and they say, oh, I don't have any light now. Now they're experiencing something.
So that experience leads to knowledge?
Yes.
What did she ask?
You've got to turn back if you're going to speak, I think.
Does that experience lead to knowledge?
Yes? Someone else?
Yes.
Yeah?
You cannot have a feeling without having a thought first. This is just the process of our body works. And so, and the way you're experiencing is through your senses. And something comes from the outside stimulating your senses, and this, in the way you interpret them, the way you accept them, this is the feelings that you experience. At least this is the way I understand the process from what I've studied.
Let's go back 2 paragraphs, 14.2. In the knowledge of God, all true knowledge and real development have their source. Wherever we turn, in the physical, the mental, or the spiritual realm. Go to 14.5. When Adam came from the Creator's hand, he bore in his physical, mental, and spiritual nature a likeness to his Maker. God created man in his own image. Here she's using different terminology. She's using physical, mental, and spiritual. Yeah? So I want to put here where it says moral, spiritual. Do we agree with that? That's where it would go. Because the mental would go here. Intellectual is mental. So that's giving us a secondary definition of what these things are referring to. Is everybody okay with that? Jonathan?
I'm still at the new in Genesis 4:1.
Okay.
Somehow this sounds as it would be bad to have that Adam knew his wife.
You think that's bad?
That's how I understood it now.
From whom? From your reading of I'm saying something.
Yeah, what we said in the last 5 minutes.
What badness have you taken from that?
It seems like that Adam knew not his wife before the fall of man. Knew, I mean, in a how to say this in English?
Intimate.
Yeah, intimate relationship.
Okay.
Because I'm saying this because in Genesis 1:28 they get the command, be fruitful and multiply. So somehow there was an intimate relationship before that. I don't know. This is just what I'm thinking or is in my mind.
I have no idea when they first have intimacy, whether it's before or after sin.
Saying because, and you brought up Genesis 3:7 has the same word new, that it's in like some kind of negative light, and he's saying maybe 4:1.
Did I intimate that intimacy with your wife is negative? I didn't mean to.
No, because
I don't
it's
think I
not
did.
intellectual knowledge. You're pointing out that it's some kind of experimental new, and you said it's the same word in 3:7.
3:7, 4:1, 4:17, 4:25. Yeah.
And 3:7 was when their eyes were open and they knew they had this experimental. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure okay, you might get some negative thought. I didn't get any negativity from it. All I'm trying to say is it's an experience that you're having. It's not information. That's the only point I want to make. It's when it's using that word knowledge. What knowledge are they gaining once they eat the fruit?
The taste of the fruit.
The taste of the fruit. So that they're going to experience something, so they're going to taste it. But when it talks about a knowledge of good and evil, I mean, what new information do they have on evil now that they didn't know before?
The separation between themselves and God.
They already knew that before. God said, if you eat, you're going to separate from me. So they knew that before and they know it afterwards.
Experience of disobedience.
Okay, yeah, but I'm asking about what knowledge, because the point you're making is the point that I want us to see, that it's knowledge, experience, it's not information. They already knew. God said, if you do it, you're going to be punished. They knew that before, just like we do. We all know that. You tell your child before they do something, if you do it, there are going to be consequences. They know that. Now they're going to experience the consequences.
It's like when the servant of the Lord says the sealing is an intellectual and spiritual settling in the truth.
We can't hear.
When the servant of the Lord says the sealing is an intellectual and spiritual settling in the truth or into the truth. So it's one where you gain intellectual knowledge, and the spiritual is where you experience by living that knowledge. That knowledge now is not only head knowledge, but it becomes a part of your experience. That's the spiritual settling. Just like when you're going to school and you acquire intellectual knowledge, it is completely different than when you have a working experience of that knowledge.
Testimonies to the Church, Volume 1, page 300, paragraph 1. 1T, 300.1. And we just read Education 14.4. 1T 300.1. The only safety now is to search for the truth as revealed in the Word of God, as for hid treasure. The subject of the Sabbath, the nature of man, and the testimony of Jesus are the great and important truths to be understood. These will prove as an anchor to hold God's people in these perilous times. But the mass of mankind despise the truths of God's Word and prefer fables, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. So the only reason we're reading that is because this is one of my justifications for even dealing with this subject. Dealing with the nature of man is one of the subjects that are of great importance and that we're required to understand. And from my experience, most people don't understand the nature of man. This is Tanya.
I entered what you told me, but it took me to 10MR, and it's taken from letter.
So what took you to 10MR?
What you just said, instead of going to first testimony, but it talks right here. There is need of knowledge that is the fruit of experience. There is need of knowledge that is the fruit of experience.
Okay, but I wanted to go here.
Oh, sorry.
I wanted to go to the subjects of the Sabbath, the nature of man, the testimony of Jesus are the great and important truths to be understood. My contention, no, let me ask you what your contention is. Why do we study reform lines? What's the purpose of the reform line?
That we may understand how things will take place. That we understand the future.
So that we can understand the future. Anyone else?
So that we can know what reform is. So that we can change.
Understand the future. And you're saying, so we can what? Understand?
Reformation, change. Experience change.
So we can understand what reform is.
By experience.
Oh, so you're not saying you're going to change that?
So, yes, experience reform.
So it's not to understand it, it's to experience it.
And I mean by experience not only intellectually but experientially.
Anyone else? Brother Larry. Oh, sorry, Brother Larry and Sister Shamila.
Well, it says here that we must understand the testimony of Jesus, and the testimony of Jesus in Revelation 19:10 is the spirit of prophecy. So I understand, as drawing lines to understand prophecy,
Why?
so that we can be prepared for what the Lord's about to do.
So we need to understand the future to prepare for it.
Yes.
Sister Shamila,
Where we are now, today,
what difference does it make where we are now?
because
Why do you want to know where we are?
we're supposed to believe in present truth, not things that are yet to come. We're supposed to study it, but knowing.
Let me go back to, you said, so we need to know where we are. Why do we need to know where we are?
To know where we're going.
So is that? To understand the future?
Okay. Yes.
That's that same point. Brother Jason.
The dealings of God with man is ever the same.
And?
I'm just saying that in every reform line, the dealing of God with man is ever the same.
So there's just like, we enjoy studying history?
No, what I'm simply saying is that all the different reforms line is the same way God deal with the first reform line, is the same way that He's going to deal with the other reform line.
So I think we all agree with that, but I'm asking, so what? What's the purpose of studying that?
It's for us to have a perfect understanding of what reform line is saying to us.
So I think that's a circular argument. We're studying the reform line so we can have a better understanding of reform line. But why are we studying them in the first place? What's the purpose of them?
To understand the change that the Lord wants to bring in us.
So would you go with that to experience reform? Would you want to change it to do what?
To experience a new experience.
To experience a new experience? A reformation? I'll put new experience then. A new experience. What is this new experience? Obviously it's new. What's the experience you've had in the past?
What I mean is you have a new higher calling in God.
So you had a lower one before?
Yeah, you could say we have a lower.
So what was the lower one that you had?
We could, when you look at a reform line, we see darkness, and then we see a knowledge there, increase of knowledge.
So what was the lower experience that you had? That now you're going to get a higher one?
The lower one is, I would say that the lower passion, and then we see the other one is the higher passion. Lower and lower passion.
So you're saying God, the purpose of the reform line is to get you out of this mode of thinking into this one, so that you're not operated or controlled by the lower passions but by the higher ones? That's the purpose of it?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Sister Kathy, then Brother Richard.
I was just going to say,
You have to speak louder because they can't hear
love of the truth.
you. Sorry.
Love of the truth for to be saved.
Everybody loves the truth.
Yeah, I know, but
No one's studying reform
not
lines.
everybody receives the love of the truth.
So the purpose of the reform lines is to receive it, not to love it, because everybody's loving the truth.
The reform line has a redemptive value, so we receive it.
So wait, so you're saying the reform line has redemptive value?
Yes.
What does redeem mean? Redemptive value. Sorry?
To bring us back.
Who are the people that need to be brought back? Isn't it the world?
We need to be converted.
Who needs to be? Who's we? Adventists.
Yeah.
So we're in the same condition as the world then, you're saying?
No.
You just said we need to be redeemed, and we need to be brought back, and we need to be converted.
Well, we were looking at our lower passions, and that was showing that if we're still controlled by those,
Then
we're not converted.
we're like the world. What's the difference between Adventists and the world?
Doesn't sound right.
Brother Richard, it doesn't sound right. Well, I'm saying what you're saying.
Yeah, I know.
Which one? Who's not right?
I need to give it more thought.
Okay, Brother Richard.
Because we lost the man was created in the image of God.
What question are you answering so that we're all back on?
You said, what's the purpose of the reform?
What's the purpose of the reform line? Okay.
So, because we had lost the image of God, man living in sin and things like that.
So we've lost the image of God. Who's we?
All of mankind.
Including?
All of mankind.
Including?
Including what? I said all.
Yeah, so if it's all, I'm asking who does all include?
Yeah,
Includes you?
Yeah, me too.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
So it includes Adventist.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between an Adventist and the worldling?
And I was dealing with the question. I go like one step at a time.
Just park that one for a minute.
All right.
What's the difference between an Adventist and someone in the world?
Well, we're God's people, His denominated people.
Okay, so we've just got a different name
We have
on our house.
No, we're the servants that's supposed to go and gather the world.
Okay, so we're servants. So we're already servants before we hit the reform line. And so the purpose of the reform line is to do what?
Well, to bring man. This is bring man back into the image of God.
So to get a servant back into the image of God. Is that what you're saying?
If you could say that, yes.
That's what you're saying.
No, that's not what
we could say that.
No, that's not what I was trying to say. But I have to think about it. Maybe right or wrong. But
You're saying here, before we come here, we're servants. Yeah? What do servants do?
I said before we get there, we're servants.
You said the purpose of the reform line is to get everybody and restore the image of God in them. I think you said restore. Yeah? So I'll put restore here, which is kind of like that. But you said everybody. And how many groups are in the world? There's servants and there's rebels. The rebels are the world. And the servants are who? You said God's people.
Yeah, somewhere back there, yeah.
Yeah? So, I'll say us. I was going to say you, then you'll get too personal if I say you.
Oh,
so
no, it wouldn't bother me.
Sorry?
I said it wouldn't bother me.
Okay, so that's us. So what's the difference between the servant and the rebel?
Between the servant and the rebel. Well, you have the elect and the. I don't know what angle you want me to answer that from, but
both of them need restoring.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you say. You say everybody needs restoring.
Yes, they do.
What do you need restoring to?
The image of God.
What do you need restoring from?
Not being in the image of God.
So they're not in the image of God. The world, Gentiles.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So they in the image of God.
To a certain degree, Yes and no.
So they only like need half a reform line because they're already halfway there or something.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
So do they need all the gospel?
Who?
The servants.
Yes, we do.
So that must mean they must be in the same condition as the world, because the world needs all the gospel.
Yeah, if you're not in the image of Christ, it don't matter what. You know,
I'm just trying to clarify, because it seems to me like you're saying that the servants and the rebels, or the God's denominated church and the world, are in the same condition.
I don't know, I have to think about all that more, but that's stuff you just sprang on me. I was trying to answer the question. I got definitely answer to the original question.
Restore.
Right.
So restore the image. Which I think is exactly the same as that.
Yeah.
Formed. You're formed in the image of God.
Right, but the restoration part is what when you go to 1 Peter 3:17. So we have a more sure word of prophecy, etc. But it's the point of it is to cause Christ to arise in your heart. So it's typifying that,
Okay.
that restoration.
So I wasn't asking the mechanism by how it happens. I was asking what the purpose of it is. So you're saying the mechanism is through prophecy. I think a number of people have said that, which is what this one is doing. But the purpose of it is to restore the image of God, or to give you an experience of reformation, or this new experience. So I'm saying if you need restoring, that means you weren't restored before. I can't remember. Oh, Sister Chimilla, then Sister Brittany.
No,
so I can't see it because
Luke
of
had
the
his
pillar.
hand up.
Oh yes, we'll go Brother Luke. I forgot.
Yeah, I was just going to say we have nothing to fear for the future except we forget the way the Lord has led us in His teaching in our past history. So that sort of ties in with prophecy and understanding the future and whatnot.
Okay, Sister Chimilla. Oh, it's okay.
So a knowledge of good and evil, that is what I believe that the difference between the world and us.
So is that information?
Truth and...
or experience when you say that? So you're going back to this. What's the difference between us?
Yes.
So when you say knowledge of good and evil, are you saying information, or are you saying experience?
Both, because knowledge leads to experience. I think that's in the Bible.
So if you're here
many times.
and you know that you're not supposed to be doing sin, information, and the world doesn't know that, so you're saying you experience that. So why would you need a reform line to restore you if you're already doing it here? What's the purpose of the reform line if you're already experiencing it here? If you've already experienced restoration here?
Who is?
Servants of God, because you said the world isn't. So the difference between us and the world is we have knowledge and they don't. And I asked you what the knowledge was. You said it's information and experience. So if you're experiencing it here, you don't need to be restored because you're already restored here. You don't need the reform line if you've already been restored, if you've got an experience.
I don't know if I would put God's people there.
Here?
Yeah, I wouldn't say knowledge and experience go there. I'd say the knowledge comes in and the experience comes.
So they don't have an experience, they just have information.
Yes.
But you would put God's people here.
Yes, I would.
Because this is us before 1989.
Yeah.
So you have to put them there.
Yeah, I'm not changing that.
Okay. So they don't have an experience.
Yeah, so we had the knowledge, but the experience wasn't there because the knowledge was yet to increase.
So I'll give you an example.
It's supposed to be progressive.
I don't know how many Adventists there are. There's 17 million people who know you're not allowed to eat pork. Got that here? Who am I pointing at? This group or this group?
Sorry, 17 million.
17 million people in the world, 20 million people in the world know you're not allowed to eat pork.
Yeah.
They have knowledge of that. Which group am I pointing to?
When you say people, that's generalizing. It could
Adventists. 20 million Adventists know you're not allowed to eat pork. That's this group.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other people.
That's my very point. There's 1.3 billion people who, for the same reason, don't eat pork because God commanded them not to. They're Muslims. So they have the same information, so there's no difference if it's just knowledge. Everyone's got the knowledge. 5 billion people on the planet know that you're not supposed to beat your children in anger. Maybe more. Adventists know that. Sorry?
6 billion.
6 billion. Now, I think there's 7 billion. I'm assuming the 2 billion do beat them in anger. Because they don't know any difference. So I'm saying 5 billion know they're not supposed to, because the rest don't know, and we know. We know everything that they know. You go to theologians in evangelical Christianity, they know about the Sabbath. Catholics know about it. Everyone knows the 7th day is the Sabbath. We don't know anything more than the world knows. We haven't got any secret information that the world doesn't know. We know everything that the world knows. So if you think about knowledge, we're in the same position. Sister Tanya, then Sister Brittany.
So the reason why we're studying the Reform lines, the Lord says right here, is to gain daily a better understanding of how to reason logically from cause to effect. And we know that that's the mind of Christ, of reasoning from cause to effect. And from the fall, we have lost the mind of Christ. We acquire the mind of Satan. And through these studying of the Reform lines, we're gaining back reasoning from cause to effect. Now, you guys were talking about knowledge and experience. From this passage that I just read, it sounds like there is need of knowledge that is the fruit of experience. It sounds like you get knowledge from the experience. Am I reading that wrong? And we're saying exactly the opposite way. We're saying that we need to have knowledge.
We're trying to address that question. So the question Sister Tanya is asking is, which comes first, experience or knowledge first? So the way she's reading 10MR,
10MR.
we won't read it, but just for reference, 10MR,
300.1.
300.1,
Yeah.
it seems to suggest that there's an experience first that gives you a knowledge.
Yeah.
And so the question, which one comes first, experience or knowledge? So we're trying to address that one. So cause and effect. So we need to understand about cause. So we could just do a study. We could go to college and do a course in, I don't know, philosophy or social science or something. You know, the world understands about cause and effect. We could do biochemistry or something, physics. The world, scientists, lots of people understand about cause and effect. So when we talk about cause and effect, it's a bit more, we need to know what that actually means about cause to effect.
But you're to arrive at why safe conclusion.
I'm not disregarding what you're saying. I agree, the cause and effect. What I'm suggesting is the way we approach religion is like voodoo science or voodoo religion. It's not real. We approach the problem in a way that falsifies the truth. But more often than not, the world approaches most issues using cause and effect. And I think that's what Ellen White's trying to say, that when we approach God, when we approach the problem of ourselves, understanding who we are, we're not using cause to effect. We're just sort of making it up as we go along.
Are we?
I think we are. Most Christians do. Most Christians think, you know, if I don't do anything, God will sort out all the problem for me.
Oh, this is just a belief theory? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, we're not using scientific principles of cause and effect. I mean, the world, you know, a college course in mathematics or physics or science or whatever subject, biochemistry, is not something that Satan invents. It's just man's understanding of how a human being was put together, or what nature looks like, or the laws of nature. It's all religion. I would suggest, when the world talks about cause and effect, they're using the principles and rules that we're supposed to be using, but we tend not to use them. We tend to sort of shut our brains down and just say, let's go with the emotions.
That's why there's a true religion and a false religion, right? The true religion Bible and then the false religion.
Okay, so we'll go with true religion and false religion. These rebels here, these worldlings, have they got a true religion or a false religion? They've got a false religion. What do they need to correct them? They need the reform line, which is going to restore the image of God in them. If we agree with that. So what religion have we got? Adventist.
True.
If we had a true religion, we wouldn't need a reform line. If we had a true religion, we wouldn't need a reform line. We've got a false religion just as much as the world has. We might have a bit more information, we might pretend everything's okay, but we're in the same condition as the world. Hence, the reform line. Isn't that why we go on and on about the reform lines? Because they are what creates the restoration of the image of God in a human being. Because before that, we've got some foolish religion going on. Haven't we? I don't think you're all convinced that we have, because it's an attack on Adventism I'm doing here. Sister Brittany.
I was just going to add to the purpose, or the original question, the purpose for studying reform lines is not only to experience reform, but is to show the need for reform because of our imminent probation.
Yes. So that's what this is. It's not just to understand what's about to happen in the future. Because the purpose of that is to do what?
Preparation.
What's the purpose of it that you just said?
To show the need for reform, not to just experience it.
Okay, so if you're going to do that, why do you need to reform? Because you've only got 1 year to go before the Sunday law.
Why do you need to?
Is that what you're saying? Okay, so we're here. This is 89, and this is midnight, and midnight's happening next year. Okay? So why do we need the reform line? Because you're saying I've got 4 months to go. That's kind of what you said?
Should always be ready.
Okay, so that's a problem that everybody's going to argue against a reform line. The church argues that you're supposed to be ready every day. But you're saying no. I think you are saying no, aren't you?
I don't know what I'm saying.
No, that's what you said. I mean, isn't that what we all say? You can't use that argument, you need to be ready every day. It's a fallacious, foolish... Why is that such a foolish argument?
Because you're not.
Sorry?
Because you're not ready every day. And you really don't believe what you're saying. And it, just like what you pointed out, like the man asked Ellen White, does she think that the Lord is coming in X amount of time? And she said, so what if the Lord wasn't coming? What would you change if he were? And he said he would live a different life if he knew that the Lord was coming in, I'll say 2 years in comparison to 5 years. And she says that selfishness. We are not supposed to be reformed because midnight is coming. We're supposed to be reformed because we love God, we know God and love God, and we want to be in God's image and likeness.
So I've seen you had just one point. Okay, so we're living in a society that we don't have a fridge. Yeah? There's no refrigeration. And it's Sunday. And we're supposed to be ready every day. And Sabbath is coming in how many days? If it's Sunday? 6 days, is that right? So, what do you need to do today? You need to cook your Sabbath food, because you're not allowed to cook on Sabbath, yeah? What would happen? It's spoiled. So, you say, okay, I won't do it today, do it on Monday. It'll spoil. What's the only logical and sensible thing that you're supposed to do? You prepare it the day before. Is every day the same? It's obvious it's not the same. You go to any Adventist institution, you work, say it's 8 hours a day, or every day of the week except Friday. What do they do on Friday? Any institution that I've ever heard of, they give you a half day. Why? Preparation, because Friday is different to every other day. And I don't know how Adventists have developed this really toxic, satanic understanding that you need to be ready every day, because every day is the same as any other day. And that's what this issue about, you need to prepare for it, the future, because you need to know you've only got a few months left. Sister Tess and Sister Tanya. It's not 2018, by the way, in case you're worried.
Two thoughts. First of all, the valley of dead dry bones. I don't think you can be a servant and be that dead.
Okay, so we're going to go to Ezekiel 37 in a second.
Okay.
Oh, another point?
Yeah,
Go. Sorry.
I think the reform line teach you about yourself, because without a reform line, I never knew I was in darkness, even though you felt it. You don't know what point you're at.
Okay, so it's to teach you about yourself, because back here, what do you think about yourself?
Yeah.
You think you're a servant.
Yeah.
This is what I think a number of you are struggling with when I'm saying you're just the same as the world, because you think you're different, and you think, how can you attack Adventists? That Adventism is worthless. It's a bogus false religion. Because we say, well, that can't be correct. It's because we think we're servants. And are we servants? I'll ask this to Tess, because she's inferring that we're not. It's to turn us into servants, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah? They were first called Christians where? In Antioch. What does that mean, they were first called Christians in Antioch? What's that teaching us? Sorry? It's louder?
Me?
Yeah.
They weren't called out before.
Okay, they weren't called, but why are they calling them Christians now?
They look like Christ.
Because they look like Christ, they talk like Christ, it's all about Christ. Yeah? So this idea of being a servant is not only just being a slave, it's also talking about some kind of restoration or looking like Jesus, being like him, behaving like him, acting like him. And if we're saying the purpose of Reform is to restore his image in you, it means you didn't have the image before. And we can claim to be a servant, but we're not really servants. And without the reform lines, as you've said, you'd never even know that you're not a servant. So someone has to stand up, hopefully us, and tell our brothers and sisters, by the way, what? You're dead, you're not a servant. You need to get into reality and understand that you're not who you claim to be. You had your hand up, and then Brother Jonathan.
The week, the way the Hebrew has set it up, it's actually a countdown. They don't actually have names to their weeks, like their days to their weeks. So it's basically 6 days to Sabbath, 5 days to Sabbath, 4 days to Sabbath. It's a countdown to the Sabbath. So the logic about saying that you have to start your preparation the first day of the first week is because you have different affairs to take care of. So from that perspective, I would accept that yes, your preparation should begin right after Sabbath in putting your affairs right with the Lord. But wisdom has to be taken care of when he says, like, well, what about your food, your diet?
So it's all a countdown to the end point, but your behavior every day is different.
Yes.
It's not the same every day. Brother Jonathan.
To experience a reform, Ellen White says it even more precisely. She says, it is by teaching them, the children, line upon line.
Where are you reading from?
Child Guidance 475, paragraph 3.
Child Guidance 475, paragraph 3.
Yeah. It is by teaching them, line upon line, precept upon precept, how to give their heart and will up to Christ, that Satan's power is broken.
So what's that saying? Why have you read that to us?
It's we already said experience a reform, but I think this quote is even more precisely. It tells you what you need to experience. We need to experience how to give our heart and will up to Christ.
Okay, let's go to Book of Romans, chapter 3. Romans chapter 3. What you really need to do is read chapters 1 and chapters 2, and even the first bit of Romans chapter 3, to understand the context of what's going on. We're in verse 9. The reason why I say that is before we even read it, Paul's going to say, I've already proved something. Whatever he's saying, he says, I've already proved this assertion to be true. So you have to go back to the first 2.5 chapters to see what his proof is, which we're not going to do. So 3:9, it says, what then? Are we better than they? No, in no wise, for we have before proved, both Jews and Gentiles, that they are all under sin. So who's he talking about? You get it in the last part of the verse. The Jews and Gentiles. He does repeat and enlarge. So if we go back to the first part of the verse, he says, are we, who's the we?
Jews.
Are we the Jews better than they, the Gentiles? Do you all agree with that? And his answer is what? So we're here. So are the Jews any different or any better than the Gentiles?
No.
What condition are they all in? They're all under sin. So there's no difference between them. So are we Jews? Yeah? We're God's people? Yes. So what's the difference between an Adventist and a Gentile? It says no difference. We're not in the fear of the Lord. There's no difference because we're all under sin. That's his argument, isn't it? When he says we, does he really mean himself? Sister Olivine, you think he's talking about himself?
Yes.
Yes? So he says, me, when I'm speaking to you, I'm under sin.
No.
You just said yes.
But I'm free to change.
Okay. So if you just say, I change, that's fine. It was a double-minded man.
Yes.
So is he under sin or is he not under sin? Or are we not sure?
He has experienced reform.
He's doing what Daniel did. He's saying we, so he's including himself when Daniel prayed for the people, his people.
So, okay, so he's sort of doing this inclusive thing because he's such a humble man. But is he under sin?
He's under grace.
He's under grace. So, his argument here is what? What's the difference between an Adventist and someone in the world? So we've got an SDA and we've got the world. What's the difference between them?
None.
They're the same. Does everybody agree with that? Yeah? So Paul has a really nice theme. He says, if you're in the church or if you're in the world, it doesn't make any difference. Because there are what? None? Yeah, there are none good. No, not one. Is Paul good?
Not by his definition.
Sorry?
Not by his definition.
So you think Paul's not good?
By his statement, he's not counting himself to be, unless he's seeing himself as separate.
Okay, so I'll say that they're all under sin. Let's hold that thought and let's go to Philippians chapter 3. Verse 1. Philippians chapter 3 verse 1. Oh, no, let's go somewhere else. I can find this one. I will go to this one. I can't find the other one I wanted to. Let me see if I can quickly find it. Okay, yeah. Let's keep your fingers in Philippians chapter 3. Let's go to Romans chapter 10, verse 12. Romans 10 verse 12. For there is no difference between Jew and Greek. So is he using the same argument? The Jews and Gentiles are the same. For the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon his name. Is this talking about this group who are under sin? Is it this group that he's referring to? No? Anybody see it differently?
Jew and Greek, it says.
Yeah, it's Jew and Greek. I understand. That's why I brought us here, because it's Jew and Greek. He says in Romans 3:9 it's Jew and Greek. So I'm asking, is it this group? Sister Olivine? No. Why no?
I'm saying no also.
Upon his name. The distinction is those who call upon it, well, in my mind.
So you're saying it's another group?
Yes.
Anyone else?
I agree.
You agree? Brother Tyler? You haven't said anything today.
Is Paul, are you saying is Paul under?
Separate question now. We did us and them, all the same, we're all under sin. Now he's going to talk about us and them again, but this is Romans 10:12 now. Different chapter. I'm asking the context of this. He's saying the same thing, Jew and Gentile. For the same Lord is over all, is rich unto all them that call upon his name. Brother Jonathan?
If we read verse 13, it says, "For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved." Would make sense to me. It's the same group. Because
The same group? Brother Tyler?
I guess it'd be the same.
Sister Olivine, they don't agree with you.
Fine. I still.
So let's come into the unity of the faith.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I think they're a different group. Let's try and work through this. Let's go to Romans 3:22. We read Romans 3:9. So let's put the verses down. This is Romans 3:9. I'm suggesting that this is Romans 10:12. Put a question mark. Let's go to 3:22. Even the righteousness of God, which is by faith of Jesus Christ, unto all and upon all them that believe, for there is no difference. So when he says there's no difference, what's he referring to? Do we agree that he's referring to there's no difference between the two groups? They're both the same. But what did this group do? They believe. So are they under sin?
No, they're under grace.
Didn't quite say they're under grace, but they're believers. And the context of this is they're not believers. So can we for sure put Romans 3:22 here? And if we're using that context, then you go back to Romans 10:22, it's because they're calling upon his name. Let's go to Acts 15:9.
Brother Parminder, does it make a difference who Romans was written to?
Who was Romans written to?
1:7 says, to all that be in Rome, beloved of God, called to be saints, the to be is added. So called saints, so to the saints in all Rome.
You didn't answer my question.
Yeah, who is
They were the saints of God.
yeah. So the book of Romans was written to the saints of Rome.
All the books were written to the saints.
There's each book is addressed to a particular group of people. If you look at the very beginning, who's addressing to?
I mean, are you talking about Jewish saints or Gentile saints? When you
No,
at the question, just the saints. But they're all saints.
Right.
I mean, 1 Corinthians is written to the saints in Corinth.
Yeah, so these are people that claim and believe in Christ.
All of these books, that's what the epistles are all about, yeah. Acts 15:9. What's this story? What's the context of Acts 15:9? Jerusalem Council. So let's read that. And put no difference between us and them, purifying their hearts by faith. So is there a difference between the Jew and the Gentile? No? So there's no difference between the Jew and the Gentile here, and there's no difference here. This people here, are they in this time period now?
Yes.
Yeah? They're under grace, they're receiving this restoration. And what phrase do we use when we talk about the reform lines? I think someone said it's go back to history, it's always the same. So we use this phrase, God's dealing with men, it's ever the same. And we're going to use that argument to say that the way he's going to deal with the church is the same way he's going to deal with the world. Why would he deal with the church and the world in the same way? Sorry? Because they were all in the same condition. They were all in the same condition to begin with, so the solution is the same. Same problem, same solution. Doesn't matter where you came from. Adventists do not believe that they're under sin. I'm not sure if the people in this room actually believe that Adventists are under sin.
What do you mean by sin?
Sin is transgression of the law. I'll just leave it at that. Whatever it is, it's not good.
Prophetic sin?
Whatever it is, it's not good.
Is that incorrect to believe that?
What?
That we're not under sin?
The church.
We or them? Where are you?
I'm saying Adventist.
You're an Adventist. Are you this one or this one, Mr. Shamila?
I hope I'm under grace.
So you're under this one?
Yes.
So I'm asking you, do you think all the other ones are here? Every Adventist?
We should be under grace.
No, you're under here, you said. What brought you here?
The message.
The message, this line here.
Message,
Yeah? So you're here. So let's put the reform line beginning like this. Time of the end. So you're saying you're here. And the world is here as well. But they're not quite here yet because we haven't gone to them. So these people are where?
Which people?
All of this.
Darkness.
What precedes the time of the end?
Darkness.
So they're all in darkness. Do we agree, or do you believe, that the whole of Adventism, the 20 million of them, are in darkness? Every single one.
No.
So it was.
I don't know.
Okay, so the reason I push in the point is because I think a lot of us don't really believe our message. We have a theory of the truth. We believe or claim to believe all of this intellectually, but we really don't believe it. You don't believe that 20 million people are in this condition, utterly lost, and that this is the only true solution to their problem. We claim it, we talk about it, but when push comes to shove, I'm not sure that we really believe it. And
I mean, the reform line is the only solution.
I've got the reform line here, yeah? This is the only way that you come under grace. And I was probably a bit hard on pushing Sister Shamila there. And she says she's not sure. And I suspect that because you don't like the implications of that, or you know lots of nice Adventists who are nicer than us, or whatever the arguments that we all hear. I wonder, do we actually believe what we teach? And if you don't believe what you teach, you're not going to experience it because you haven't even got what? Early writings. No, it's not early writing. An intellectual and a spiritual settling into the truth. You don't even believe it intellectually. If you don't intellectually believe that this is the only solution for everybody, you can't even begin to have an experience of it. So, we just read all of these ones. Let's go back to Philippians chapter 3. Verse 1. No, we'll do one more. Let me do one more. Colossians 3:11. So I really want us to get this point. Paul has a theme in the New Testament. He says, whether you're a Seventh-day Adventist or whether you're a Gentile, it makes no difference. You're either going to be put into two camps. One of the two. You're either in this camp or this one. And Adventists do not believe that. So I want us to really be comfortable with this. Colossians 3:11. These are all familiar passages to us. They're not new, strange Bible verses. Where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision or uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond, nor free, but Christ is all and in all. So where's Christ? He's in all of these people. Yeah? He's in the world and he's in the Adventist. Yeah? So if we just said, this is the man, here's Christ in him, and it's the same with this person. Whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, Christ is in you. What about this one? What's in this person? Sorry? Sin. I'll put LP, lower passions, or the sin. Yeah? I don't think we believe that. Because if we believe that, we'd probably change the way we approach the whole problem. It would affect the way we approach our own problem for ourselves. Galatians 3:28.
Could you give an example of what you're saying?
What do you mean? An example?
That we don't believe it, and that way if we did, we would be acting differently. Could you give an example of that?
Can anybody give an example?
I think many practical examples have been given since the class has begun. Like when you were asking Brother Richard, and even from the time you asked the question, the first thing on the reform line is darkness. And yet once you put it where our minds know that it is darkness, once you draw that line and you put the time of the end, and you start asking persons the question, they refuse to admit that there is darkness that is before the time of the end. And the reason for refusing to say that is the very point that you're making. We do not want to admit that we are in darkness. So it's uncomfortable, as you say. The point is, because we may think, oh, we know good persons within the church or whatever, but it is uncomfortable to admit to a state of darkness.
Brother Tyler.
I think the real problem isn't that we don't see darkness. I think the real problem is we don't see light. I think everyone in this room, at one level or another, believes that they're in darkness and that they haven't come out through the reform lines. And I think that maybe that's just the opposite ditch on the other side. One side you can say that Adventism or God's people aren't in darkness, and the other side says they're not in light.
Say that again. What did you say about us? That we believe that we're...
I think a lot of people believe us, in this room probably, that they're not out of darkness. That they're not in the reform line in terms of salvation or under grace or however you want to say it.
I don't want to get too personal, but...
Well then the movement,
so you...
Then go movement wide.
No, because I was going to ask people, do you really believe that? My sister, my brother, do you really believe that you're still in darkness? And why would someone say that? Why would someone think they're still in darkness?
Personal life.
Sorry?
If you look at your personal life.
If you look at your personal life. So if you look at your personal life, you still think you're here. So
sometimes, yeah.
Sorry?
Sometimes, yeah.
So all of this is not, you're not even experiencing this.
You don't understand light. That's what the problem is.
It's a progression.
Sorry?
It's a progression. Once you're out of darkness, you are out of darkness.
But when your mind is constantly consumed with the Word of God, what do you call that?
Or is this the mind setting, once saved, always saved?
Saved, always saved. If someone had their hand up.
I was thinking, just as I've learned the reform lines or whatever, you go through those moments of where you think like, man, is this really true in my life? And
is what really true?
What God is doing, or whatever. Why am I not experiencing this? Right? I mean, it's just a practical way to think. If the Bible is telling you this, and then your experience is contrary to what the Bible is telling you, then it's something wrong. So I think one way that this is why she has a quote. She says, how about naked faith? Where you claim the promises before the feeling or whatever. And I think that's what God is trying to teach us. These reform lines, you have to bring your life into conformity to it, and you have to believe what it's teaching you.
So the reason you're not experiencing it is obvious, because you're not doing the medical missionary work, and you're not doing evangelism and doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's why you're not experiencing it. Isn't it?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
No.
I'm saying the experience as far as like in 9/11, all right, we're supposed to, it's the refreshing. So you're supposed to be overcoming sin. You're supposed to be having the sanctification experience. You're supposed to be living right. But when you come in, let's say after 9/11, you wonder like, how can I experience this? What did I miss? But the Bible's teaching us, it's not only it's by faith. You claim this and you believe it because this is what the Bible is teaching you to believe. So we have to change our mind. Say, this is what the reform line is telling me. This is what I'm going to believe. This is how I'm going to live.
Sister Olivine?
1 P 300 paragraph 1 says the subjects of the Sabbath, and we do know the subjects of the Sabbath, the nature of man, and the testimony of Jesus are the great and important truths to be understood. Since I'm speaking now for me, it is since this class that I've begun to understand the nature of man. And an understanding of the nature of man, I can testify that knowing in beginning to understand it or getting a clearer understanding of it, I am getting a clearer understanding of what it means to have victory over sin. Before that time, I was in darkness because I did not know what it meant, what the nature of man is, and therefore how to overcome sin.
Let me ask this quick question. We still haven't gone to Philippines yet, and I'm running out of time. Here's 9/11. Okay, we're not going to read Philippians because I'll try and make a quick summary. So let me ask the question. We'll do Philippians tomorrow. Here we are. Maybe we're a bit over here. 2017. We're almost at midnight. We believe that. We claim to believe that. And we're talking about this restoration of the image of God in us. We haven't got much time left. Yeah, we agree with that. No matter when you started, even if you've been here for this long or this long, the time you've got left isn't. So it doesn't make any difference because everyone's in the same condition. Yeah, whether you're bond or free, whatever it is, everyone's in the same position. So if we're going to say, let's not define what sin is. So the purpose of this was to restore the image of God in a human being. And part of that work is to deal with the sin problem. So not to be under sin, to be under grace. Agree with that? So if you're practicing sin, however you want to define what that is, Why are you doing that? Why are we still practicing sin if we're supposed to be under this model and not this one?
You don't know what grace is.
Sorry?
You don't know what grace
I thought we just said this was grace.
Oh.
Then is that what our definition of grace is? That grace is this line that I've drawn. We might have expressed it that way, but isn't that what grace is?
Experienced it.
Sorry?
You know it, but you probably haven't experienced it.
Yeah, okay, so you haven't experienced the line. You know about the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So you haven't experienced it. So when we're going to experience, why haven't we experienced it? Sorry?
Haven't asked.
Everybody in this room is asking. I don't know. Have you asked to experience it? Have you asked to experience it? I don't think nobody would say, I didn't ask. I think everybody's asking. Brother Tyler.
I think it's probably a misconception of the model. You can't, if you don't know what to do or what's expected or whatnot, then you can't possibly expect to get there. So you have to have a correct knowledge of something before you can have a correct experience.
You have to have a correct knowledge before you have the correct experience. So this is what we need to deal with 10MR, knowledge or experience first. Shimela?
Peter 1:5, it shows us the order of events in order to be under grace. It shows us the different, so knowledge precedes.
So when you come under, okay, so when you tell me when you come under grace then, if you're going to use that ladder, where in this line are you going to come under grace?
From 9/11.
So okay, so you're now under grace. So if you're under grace, you're not under sin.
No.
So why are we doing sin still? If you came to be here in 2017, on the line.
You're not really there.
So it depends who you ask. It depends who you ask. If you ask some people who are on the message, they'll tell you, when do you properly come under grace? When are you really going to be here?
Midnight.
Why? So they say you have to be here to really be under grace. Why? Sorry?
No, so I don't agree with it.
So why do you disagree with it?
Because grace, part of the definition of grace is the power to have victory over sin. Or it's a victory over sin. So if that has to be at 9/11.
So if you don't agree with them intellectually, you're experiencing what they're experiencing.
Yes, we should be experiencing that.
But you are experiencing what they're experiencing. They're still doing sin, and so are you.
No, that's what I'm saying. If they say you, unless I misunderstood the question.
So why are you not experiencing something different to them?
Why am I not experiencing something different? I'm saying you should be experiencing something different.
I'm asking you personally, why are you not?
I didn't say I wasn't.
Okay, good. Brother, you disagreed with what he said. Oh.
No, that just got way massive confusing. Now, when you're going with the midnight and the grace there, it doesn't make sense because you haven't prepared. The 10 virgins, I mean, they didn't have the oil. It's midnight. You haven't prepared, so that can't be. Grace doesn't just appear then, and then you have more time to fill it up. So that can't be right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know, but your dialogue back and forth confused me, is what I was saying.
Okay, so we've put mental and intellectual, spiritual and moral. We're saying that the emotional aspect of our lives control the physical. We're now developing this to say that SDAs and the world, are under the same condition, same problem, same solution. God's dealing with men is ever the same. I don't know how many of you agree with this, really agree with it. If you don't, you're not under reform line. I'll say that straight. If you don't believe, every Adventist, regardless of how nice they look, what condition they're in, they're under this problem, they're under sin.
Every Adventist.
All of them. All of them. Because if they're not, then what is this reform line? It's just a waste of time, isn't it? It's just a nice Bible study. Either it's true or it's not. Paul, his whole argument, which is why everyone hates him, except the people who, his friends, is because he's developing this argument. And that's why people are going to hate us. Because we're required to develop and understand the same argument. That there's no salvation in Adventism. In fact, it's dangerous to be an Adventist. You're better off being a worldling. Aren't you?
Yep.
You're better off being here than here.
I thought they're equal.
Sorry?
You just said that.
Yes, they are equal.
So why
They're equal. And the reason why is because someone said, I think it says, they think they're servants.
Okay.
The Gentiles know they're not servants. They know they're in rebellion. Adventists think they're servants. So when you tell them you're in the same condition as the world, they don't believe you. That's why their condition is the worst to be in. Revelation 3. Yeah? That's why it's so toxic to be an Adventist. It's got 9/11, but from 1989. It's a dangerous place to be. Because it's really hard to jump from here to here. And I think many of us who are in this message, even though we claim to believe it, we really deep down don't believe that to be here is in a bad place and you're in the same condition as the world. And you need to come out from this one into this one. And if that's the case, we need to understand why we're behaving like we behave. And part of this understanding is an intellectual understanding of how we're put together, how we're constructed, what changed in our nature, what didn't change in our nature. But if you come to the wrong conclusion, the wrong place, you're going to end up saying that whatever your definition of sin is, the sin problem gets dealt with here. And the reason it gets dealt with there is because there's not enough grace in this history to deal with the problem. And most of us, whether we are willing to verbalize that or not, actually believe that. We don't believe there's enough grace to sort out the problem here, but we don't want to say that. Last point, then we have to close down.
I start to see it clear in my mind. It brings my mind to the book of Isaiah chapter 6. When Isaiah experienced that, and Isaiah was saying that I am an unclean lip. So Isaiah realized that he is in the same condition as Israel. But in that time period, Isaiah received the grace of God because God has given him the grace now. So Isaiah is perfect in that time period. As we place Isaiah at 9:11.
Amen.
Just a quick, the sin you're talking about, is that willful sinning or ignorant sinning? I think there's a big difference between those two.
Well, I'll put it here to remind us. Sins of ignorance or willful. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your watch care over us. We ask and pray that you would be with us and help us, Lord, to have not only a clearer understanding intellectually, but to begin to enter into an experience that this reform line is designed to produce in every human being on this planet, whether we're Jews or whether we're Gentiles. Help us, Lord, to experience this. We know that you have given us the privilege of being priests so that we can be the vanguard of experiencing the everlasting gospel. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.